Good evening from Lawrence, Kansas, and from Allen Fieldhouse tonight. The site of a Kansas Jayhawks come-from-behind win, 87-71 over the Baylor Bears, in one of the biggest games of the entire college basketball year, certainly the biggest game of the day, and one of the most important games in the Big 12 race as well. I'm Brendan Dzwierzynski with you live from Section 13A at Allen Fieldhouse, recapping this KU win, and it's really not telling you the entire story or painting the whole picture if you just say KU won by 16 points over it. All right, minor technical difficulties, but we are back, we are live, and again, it's not really painting the entire picture to tell you that KU just won this game by 16 points, because in reality, they won this game by so much more than that. They were down by 17 in the first half. After a media timeout and a Baylor free throw on a 4-point play, that made it 40-23, Baylor leading KU. And again, that was in the first half. It felt like this game was going to get out of hand rapidly. And at the break, Baylor still led, although by slightly less. It was a 13-point game at the break, 45-32. But in the second half, all hell broke loose in a positive way for KU, cutting it down to a 7-point game within the first minute and a half of that second half. And from there, it was just a torrid run for the Jayhawks to pick up a 16-point win. They outscored Baylor in the second half by 29 points, 55-26, and if it hadn't been for a garbage time basket by Baylor late, it would have been more than a 30-point deficit in that second half favoring the Jayhawks. And they got a couple of absolutely phenomenal individual performances in this game, and despite fourth leading scorer for KU in this one, it starts with Dajuan Harris. He was absolutely remarkable for KU in this one. His final numbers for the game, he ends up with 14 points, goes 6 of 8 from the floor, knocked down a pair of twos on as many attempts, and had 9 assists in the game. He has really become the spark plug, and really even more than that for this Kansas team. As I put it on Twitter over the course of the game, at Brendan DZW is where you can find me. He's really the you go, we go player for this Kansas team. And as Kevin Flaherty of 24/7 Sports tweeted out right after the game, KU is undefeated this year. Yes, 0 losses in games in which Dajuan Harris has scored more than 3 points. An unbelievable kind of statistic, and one that obviously worked out in KU's favor tonight. He was sensational. His defense was lauded by Bill Self after the game as well. He was the straw that stirred the drink for KU in this one and helped propel the Jayhawks to this huge win over Baylor. He was one of 4 KU players who did get into double figures in this game. They were led by Jalen Wilson, who had 21 points in the game, and frankly, it was not even an especially good game for Wilson, especially not in the first half. Started 0 of 6 from the floor, 0 of 4 from 3. Most of his points in the first half were just at the free throw line because he couldn't throw the ball in the ocean from the side of the boat. He even missed 2 uncontested layups in the first half. One a little bit more difficult than the other, going up and under with a reverse. The other one, he was wide open, couldn't get it to go down. Said he just needed to see something end up differently, so he took his own shooter sleeve off during that first half, threw it to the scorer's table, and eventually, once the second half rolled around, he came away with a huge night. Despite going just 6 of 16 from the floor and 0 of 5 from three-point range, Jay Will did go 9 of 10 at the free throw line, had 13 rebounds, and ended up with 21 points in the game. The other double-figure scorers for KU, KJ Adams, who had 9 of them in the first half to lead KU there. He finished with 17 for the game. And then Grady Dick as well, just 6 of 18 shooting, only 2 of 9 from three-point range. You know they say that shooters shoot. He did keep shooting. Eventually, ball started to go in a little bit more for him. He wound up with 16 points in the contest. And while we were talking about Dajuan Harris, and not just his offensive ability, but his defensive prowess as well, he was mentioned along with Kevin McCullough for really setting the tone, at least defensively, for the entirety of the second half. McCullough not playing at 100%. Self mentioned that in postgame just a few moments ago. If you remember back on Tuesday night when KU picked up another convincing win over Oklahoma State, late in the game, McCullough stepped on an Oklahoma State player, rolled his ankle, did not return in the final few minutes of that game, was fine afterwards, was rehabbing it all week. Self said he wasn't 100%, but still came out, played a really strong game today. Offensively, McCullough ends up with 9 points. He grabbed 8 rebounds as well. Had a steal in the contest. Just another all-around strong game for Kevin McCullough, who slumped a little bit earlier in this season during KU's 3-game losing skid, including a loss to this very Baylor Bears team, but he has since come on very strong and has been such a crucial part of this second half stretch of just unbelievable success for this KU team. As a group, KU shot 29 of 57 from the floor for the game. That's 51%. And that's with a 37% first half performance, to open up the game. KU was 19 of 30 from the floor in the second half. That's better than 63% for the game. Now, the complete opposite is the case for Baylor after this one. The Bears were absolutely unconscious in the first half. How about 9 of 14 from three-point range? They were making tough shots. Adam Flagler looked fantastic, as did Keontae George, especially two of the best guards in the country and maybe the best backcourt in the country, period, when you tag in LJ Cryer with them as well. And KU wasn't able to take advantage of some major foul trouble for Baylor, especially in the post during that first half. But the lid went back on the hoop for Baylor in the second half. After going 9 of 14 from three in the first 20 minutes, they went a whopping 1 of 11 from beyond the arc in the second half, which, interestingly enough, actually matches KU's first half three-point shooting total. In that first half, when KU went down by as many as 17 points, they were just 1 of 11 from three-point range. Turnabout is fair play, though, and then Baylor had the tough half in the second half, and KU was off and running. Baylor finished 44% for the game, 40% from three-point range. Struggled at the free throw line as well. A little surprising for Baylor. They were just 56.3% on free throws for the game. Bill Self called Dajuan Harris the player of the game. I think that's entirely fair to say. Again, he was really the one that propelled KU into that second half, threw some tremendous lobs. Ernest Uday, also Grady Dick, had a big-time finish, shot the ball well, those 2 3-pointers, as I mentioned, and he has been the most important player for this Kansas team over the last couple of weeks. Jalen Wilson's still the best one. Jalen Wilson's going to be a consensus first-team All-American, but it's been Dajuan Harris who has really been the true game changer for this Kansas team over the last few weeks. And with that, a major game for the Big 12 championship race as well. Baylor now falls a full game back of the leaders with just 4 games to play. KU remains tied in first place in the league with the Texas Longhorns, who barely, by 1 score, knocked off the last place Oklahoma Sooners today down in Austin. So it's KU and Texas, 1 game up on the rest of the pack with 4 games to go in Big 12 play. And don't forget, those teams are going to play each other coming up in the final game of the year down in Austin at the Moody Center coming up on March 4th. But again, let's wrap things up here from Allen Fieldhouse. And up to this point, the biggest win of the year for the Kansas Jayhawks. They take down the Baylor Bears after being down 17 in the first half, 13 at halftime. They end up with a 16-point win, 87-71 over the 9th-ranked Baylor Bears. KU will be next in action coming up on Monday night when they take on TCU, a much healthier TCU team that got back Mike Miles today and also should have a healthy Eddie Lampkin for Big Monday down in Fort Worth. We'll, of course, be talking all about this game, K-State's win over Iowa State, and so much more coming up on the Sports Voice of Kansas on Monday, 580 WIBW. Jake and Fulton have you for mic'd up from noon to 3, and then join myself and Dan Lucero from 3 until 6 on 580 Sports Talk. Make sure you're following us on Twitter as well, at Sports on 580, and head over to our website, 580WIBW.com, for continued post-game coverage of this KU win today over the Baylor Bears. We will talk to you on Monday. Until then, I'm Brendan Dzwierzynski for the Sports on 580